thank you all very much for coming. It's very kind of you. Whether it was a sty, I didn't know what it was called. I thought maybe it was like a little cyst. It was a little, like a warty type thing that was growing on his eyelid. And I'd had something like that on my shoulder, which had just been like a little wart thing, pink skin coloured. Then I noticed it was going sort of brown, a bit crusty. And I thought, oh, that's dodgy. You know, that's not going to happen. And I got a toothpick and some pure oregano essential oil, and very carefully painted the wart with the oregano essential oil, being careful not to get it on the surrounding skin. And I did that every day, and on about the 7th day, I couldn't find it. It's gone. So it's amazing what can be done. So, you know, I'm really super lucky because I'm learning stuff all the time because I do, you know, interview people. So let me just tell you what I've learned in the last few days, which really surprised me. Did you know that each year there are over 1 million health articles written, published every year, over 1 million of them. Now, less than 20% are in English. So my friend Phil gave me this idea that what should happen is that we should be using AI for really good purposes. Now, imagine AI went through those 1 million plus papers a year, plus the 50 million plus that already existed, searching for keywords like cures for something, for example. So there's this massive resource that we could be tapping into, which would probably give the answers to many health problems. You know, so somebody in Japan solved a health problem in 1956. Well, who knows? You know, virtually nobody. So there is this incredible resource to be tapped out there. So let me give you an example of stuff that people sort of don't know about. Now, 10 years ago, the University of Rome, in conjunction with a medical doctor, Dr. Valero, I can't remember what his second name is, started researching blood. So they took 10 mil of blood out of patients who had been, 2,000 patients, by the way, who had all been told they would need a new knee. Right? They'd all been told they'd need a new knee. And what they did is they took 10 mil of blood out from each person, and they did a procedure to it so that the blood went into like a solid lump. It took 24 hours for this procedure, shaking or something like that, temperature. Anyway, so they then took these 2,000 people and made 3 tiny 3 mil incisions into their knee. And with very careful placing, they took little tiny slivers of their own solid blood, put it in these tiny little incisions that they'd made, and all of them, every single one, did not need a new knee replacement. Right? Okay, so this is going on now. If somebody needs a new knee replacement, you can fly to Rome and have this procedure done. I don't know what the waiting list is, but this exists, right? Exists right now. So let me give you another example. In Russia, before the Soviet system collapsed, they were doing a lot of research in terms of health. They were restricted because the West didn't allow them chemical pharmaceutical drugs, so this was a good thing, obviously, for them, because they still were using frequency devices, homeopathy, mineral baths, electrotherapy, whatever it might be. They retained a lot of this knowledge, but they also were aware that the Americans had weapons that could blind anybody with their eyes open on the battlefield. Their spies had informed them that they had a capability to blind everybody. So the Russian military put infinite budget to repairing retinas, and they, infinite amount of money because they didn't want everybody to be blind. And they managed to do it. They can repair retinas to a huge degree. They can repair macular degeneration. They can repair ocular issues that are supposedly incurable, like retinitis pigmentosa and detached retinas. And they're getting something in the region of 70 to 80% reversal of blindness in Russia right now. Yeah. And how are they doing it? Well, they're doing it with a number of methods. The primary method is peptides. Now, This is not meant to be an advert for peptides, but it will be once you've heard what goes on. So, 1991, the Soviet Union collapses, and the work continues because of the results they're getting. And they're now something in the order of 30 different peptides that are available, and they're available from different sources. They've now made some synthetic peptides. They've also, the primary peptides came from animals. And you have to excuse me because my insulin alarm is telling me something. And it's actually telling me to eat something. So, yes, well, that sounds great. So, while I'm going to disappear just for 2 short minutes, I suggest you might want to pass that around and give it a good whack. Okay, so the peptides. Now, which do you think of all the peptides is the most popular one? It could be the lungs, it could be the kidneys, the liver, the brain, the eyes. It's the pineal gland peptide that's the #1 bestseller, and most people take 3. The other 2 bestsellers are the thymus peptide, which is all about stimulating your immune system, and then the blood vessel peptide. So many people have issues with blood vessels, from diabetics to heart problems to eyes. Having a good blood flow is a very important thing. So peptides, you don't have to take them for the rest of your life or anything like that. Quite often people will take them for a couple of months, and what they are gene switches. Doctors are taught that your genes dictate your fate. Your DNA, you're stuck with it and that's it. Of course, this isn't true. There's epigenetics, above genetics, and peptides are gene switches. So a gene is either on or off. It's not half on. And so if somebody could repair, given half a chance, your body wants to repair, it wants to fix you, but if you're low on vitamins or minerals or something, so there are ways to kickstart the body back into working properly. Frequency devices are one, and peptides are probably the most exciting development that's going on in the field of health and longevity that's around at the moment. And they're not inexpensive, but they're not overwhelmingly expensive either. And most people take 3 at a time. And for those of you who are members of the Secret Health Club, you can watch my videos with Phil Mycans on peptides. And I've just done another one with him where a lot of this information actually comes from, which I'll be putting out next week. So there's incredibly good news, really, for those of us who are ahead of the curve. And clearly doctors aren't. They say it could be, they say it can be 40 years before an idea percolates through the system. Because basically the teachers have got to die because they're still teaching what they learnt all that time ago. And so, forgive me, I'm going to have another bite of banana. So a couple of you will have heard this story before, but I'd like to explain probably my best result ever, the most success I ever had. And there's this guy, he was in a lot of pain. His eyesight was terrible, and he couldn't think straight. He had brain fog. So at the end of the session, everything's fixed, eyesight great, out of pain, brain fog gone, and I realized I'd forgotten to switch the machine on. So never underestimate the power of the mind. And so, I don't really see clients anymore, but when I did, I'd use every trick in the book. I will order people to get better, because I don't care what it is that makes them get better, but belief is a huge part of it. There's a fabulous book by Dr. Lisa Rankin called Mind Over Medicine, where they look at the placebo experiments that have been done over the years, and there are masses of them, and in some cases the placebo works 80% of the time. I mean, so who's doing the healing? Well, the person themselves. We are self-repairing, but if somebody's told you, like a doctor, that you can't self-repair and you believe it, well, that may be what's going to happen to you. And most of us have been led to believe that we are incurable in some way, because that's what the doctors have been taught. Oh dear, your body goes wrong, nothing you can do about it, it's basically your fault, and here's some drugs. So this is, as you all know, an insane way of looking at things. So as somebody who has not that much patience, when I was introduced to the fact that Tesla had invented some frequency devices in the 1890s, I liked the idea of it. So probably many of you either have or know about Rife technology. So Rife came after Tesla, and he used individual frequencies to heal people. He used individual frequencies to destroy parasites. He'd figure out what the frequency of a tapeworm was, for instance, and then blast the body with the equal and opposite frequency and sort the problem out. But when I first bought a Rife machine some 10 years ago, and it was the Rife, I had 4 Rife machines. When I mentioned the story earlier and forgot to switch the machines on, those were Rife machines. And I was using spooky devices, and I've got lots of videos with John White, and lots of people had great results with spooky. But for me, I found it a little bit geeky, and I just didn't have the patience to read the instruction book, basically. First of all, the first frequency machine, actually, Tesla was the first one. I did at one period use this device, which is known as the Pain Genie or the Scanar, Russian device, again from the Soviet era. They wanted a device that could fix anything. They'd watched Star Trek on TV in the 70s, so they knew they wanted some device that would cure everybody. And this device, which runs on a little 9-volt battery, is very, very good for getting people out of pain. Surprisingly good. But I started with a bigger version of this technology, and so what Tesla discovered in the 1880s was that people coming into his lab, where there were massively high frequencies going on, hugely high voltages, all seemed to get better from any health problems that they had, whether they were in pain or whether they were healing slowly. Just being within the frequencies fixed people. So I was working with a medical doctor almost 20 years ago, and he told me about this technology and the fact that hospitals used to have them, doctors used to use them, and for some reason they had just sort of fallen out of favor. So I bought one, and the very first person I treated was a next door neighbor who hadn't been able to drive for many weeks because he'd got a frozen neck. He just couldn't drive because he couldn't bend his neck, twist his neck. So I treated him for about 15 minutes, and this was technology that I liked because it only had a volume knob, right? That was all. There was no frequencies to dial up. It just worked. And so the very first time I used it, I got him out of pain right away. 15 minutes of treatment, and he'd been in pain for 3 months. So I thought that was good. And I didn't have an instruction book because there wasn't one with it. I bought it second-hand and it was really old. But anyway, there was nothing to it. So the next person I treated on, he had had an injury for 20 years. He'd been a DJ at the Roundhouse in London and watched a speaker column about to collapse, and he thought, kill this young girl, and he managed to get under it and prop it up. But in the process of propping it up, he'd crushed 3 vertebrae. And he'd been in pain for 20 years when I met him, and treated him, got him out of pain immediately. Well, it took a few minutes. And So I'd met him at a party, and I treated him at the party, and I said, look, you know, you've been in pain for 20 years, we've got you out, but don't do anything violent, you know, just think of yourself, the words I used to think of yourself as a freshly baked cake, you know, treat yourself gently. So you come out of pain after 20 years. Anyway, 8 o'clock the next morning, I get a phone call, and you know at 8 o'clock in the morning when they ring, there's something serious. And he said, Clive, I had the best night ever. He said, I danced till 4 in the morning. Oh, God. And he said, I'm in more pain now than I've ever been. Come back immediately. So I go back immediately, treat him for another 10 minutes, get him out of pain. That lasted 2 years. So I thought, wow, you know, why has this technology been lost and forgotten? How is that possible? Well, yeah, you save money, but that's only part of the story. What happened? Oh, just out of interest, have any of you read The Invisible Rainbow? Yeah? So The Invisible Rainbow is a fantastic book which records the expansion of electricity from its inception. You know, people don't know that Marconi, for example, who was exposed to massively high frequencies, almost immediately had health problems and died very young. A lot of the people who were exposed to radio early on basically got ill and died because there are frequencies that are healthful and frequencies that are harmful. So when radio as such, well, when the telegraph came out, you could track diseases as the telegraph poles went up. When they introduced electricity to Bhutan, and Bhutan, as you probably know, is a closed country, they allow 1,000 people in a year. When they introduced electricity, you could spot the diseases as the pylons went out into the Himalayas. You know, diseases like diabetes, like everything you can think of, basically hadn't happened in Bhutan, and you can see the direct relationship with electricity. When battlefield World War I radios started happening, there were all sorts of illnesses. Then when radio proper happened, a lot of people got very ill indeed. And the Spanish flu, which wasn't one thing and it didn't start in Spain, there are many bundles of evidence to show that Spanish flu was triggered by several factors, one of them being powerful radio transmitters starting up around the world, and also aspirin. So aspirin was the first really famous money-making patented medicine, and they gave it to the soldiers. It was reserved for the soldiers only in World War I. So the soldiers came back with these miraculous stories of how they were in great pain and aspirin fixed their pain, but there was also this wonderful side effect that people's temperature came down. And it was assumed that because aspirin was so good for pain relief, that the fact that it brought your temperature down, which brought down inflammation and therefore brought down pain, was a good thing. However, you know, we now know that inflammation is healing. You know, cancer is inflammatory, many inflammatory diseases, but the doctors would say, oh, you're inflamed, let's turn the inflammation down. But actually inflammation is how we actually heal. You know, you cut yourself, there's a bit of inflammation and a bit of pain, but that high temperature burns off nasty bacteria. You know, high temperatures are very, very useful. That's why we get fevers. Now, the first device that I've been talking about was called diathermy, which was about heating the body from the inside. So how diathermy and this device works, according to Tesla, is you're giving the cells of your body an electrical massage. Literally, you're massaging every cell of the body, and by doing that, you can reset the cells to where they should be. In other words, working properly. So I ignored this technology preferring to use the bigger technology that they used in hospitals. The problem with that was that I could barely lift it. And so when radio came out in the world, they took all these machines out of the hospitals because they interfered with radio. These happened to be long wave, and it was a problem. And then as the Second World War approached, they were worried about spies, German spies, Japanese spies, and the big hospital devices could easily be turned into very, very powerful radio transmitters. So a combination of factors, they took them out of all the hospitals, but they replaced them, instead of long wave, with short wave devices. Now at the same time, technology changed, and they went from Tesla coils to valve technologies, and then to transistors and so on. And people didn't realize for the first 2 or 3 years that while shortwave devices, shortwave diathermy, worked quite well, it also killed quite a few people. And it took them a couple of years to work out that shortwave wasn't fully safe as longwave had been. And then with the Second World War and Rockefeller medicine, drug medicine coming out, they stopped teaching electrotherapy. So, the Methodists, John Wesley, in 1750 was using electrotherapy to cure his flock. Right? 1750, they were using electricity in the form of a Leyden jar, which is like a primitive battery, to give people very, very mild shocks. Not horrible shocks, just very, very mild. So when if you experience this machine, you can barely feel it. And although the power is hundreds of thousands of volts, and the frequencies are very high, the ampage is so low that basically you put it on your skin, you barely feel it. If you turn it up, you can. So I've got a video which is worth seeking out. It's on the Secret Health Club, where I treat 34 people in a row at a talk like this with these machines, get every single one out of pain. Every single one, 34 in a row. So after this, with what time we've got, anybody who is in any pain, myself and my wonderful colleague Vicky, we've got 4 machines here, so we can treat a few people at once. It only takes a few minutes. So why was it that our great-great-grandparents forgot about this technology? Because this was used by dentists. Really common with dentists, because you get a few minutes of anesthesia with the cocaine electrode. So dentists were using them commonly. The hairdressers were using them. When I was younger and I used to meet professional hairdressers with this, they explained to me that back in the 30s or the 40s, they taught this in hairdressing school, because you can regrow hair to some degree with it. And so you can treat open wounds, you can treat eyes, ears, you can. Over the years, they made an electrode for every part of the body you can think of. And so, but as I say, I'm totally amazed that somehow our family, a few generations back, forgot that this worked. The propaganda, like now, where they've propagandized the whole world to think that they need a jab, somehow they managed to convince people that the old technology was a waste of time and the new stuff was the only way, and they won the game. Because where is this technology now? If people do find them, which they do every now and then in the attic or something, one of these machines crops up. But I think almost everybody, if they found one, would think, well, it's very interesting, but compared to what we have now, compared to modern technology, this couldn't possibly be any use these days. And this is where everybody makes a mistake. I've found nothing, no matter what the price, that works better than stuff from 100 years ago. Wow. It's crazy. So, all right. So a couple of people came up to me earlier to tell me that they'd had a couple of results, a bit like Eli with his eyelid. I can't remember who it was. Yeah. Thanks, Clive. Can you speak loudly?
Yeah, so I met Clive in the dining hall, and I said, my knees want to thank you, because about 3 years ago I was bedridden for 6 months. I don't know how it came on. It came on very suddenly, and my knees swollen up, and I couldn't walk, and the pain was getting worse and worse, travelled through my body, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't move. I thought it lasted 6 months, and like into the 4th month I thought, I'm never going to walk again. It was that bad. I couldn't eat. I would only have a spoon of ice cream a day, and so I was extremely thin. I was getting very, very poorly. My wife, then we decided to call the ambulance, which was another big mistake. It's a big story there, but I did go to the hospital. Told me I was a murderer because I wouldn't take the jab to get into the hospital. So they then put me in a back room on my own, out of the way, and left me there for about 3 hours. So then I discharged myself and came home. It's obviously still in agony. And we decided to have a Zoom call with Clive. And 2 or 3 Zoom calls later, Clive had obviously told us about the Tesla machine, so we bought one, but also about the nutrition. So Clive advised me to take a huge dose of magnesium, vitamin C, just quite a few different things, but those are the 2 main things. Plus the Tesla machine, where my wife would place them on my knees, and I would also charge myself up with it. And within 6 weeks, I was able to walk, and I had no problems. And touch wood, I haven't had any problems since.
Well, great. There was somebody else, I think. Yeah.
Mine was the wife machine. So it's a sneaky too. I used to have eczema when I was younger. I had it in my arms. I think it was brought on by vaccine, or rubella vaccine. When I got stressed, I used to get it in my hands. It used to come up in my hands. It did not look very nice, giving over money and saying hello to people. I'm a personal trainer as well, so it was quite tough with that. People sort of looking at me thinking, what's wrong with you? COVID kicked it off, obviously, stress. I was looking after my mum, looking after my son, and taking him out of school. My hands were covered in eczema, and I had the Rife machine. I've had it for 2 weeks, and it's gone, pretty much. I'm still treating it remotely, but yeah, there's no itching, there's nothing.
And it was the spooky that you used.
Spooky.
Wasn't it spooky too?
Spooky, so I bought the essential kit, and I've done a little bit of contact to start with, and then I just ran the DNA, and that's what I run during the day when I'm out and about looking after my mum and the son and stuff, and just keep that going, which is
brilliant.
and also you cured my mum's trigger thumb as well with the Pro 777.
Okay.
Listen to that, she took loads of magnesium and it went.
Well, brilliant. And how much did your spooky cost you? 'Cause I didn't...
400.
400 quid?
Two motors.
Yeah.
2 motors.
So not expensive.
And I bought it, my mum had shingles last year. She's not had a jab or anything like that. That was just from the stress. She's 80, she was locked up, for 3 months. And she now has the pain and the neuralgia afterwards. So basically I bought the spooky to get rid of that. But she wanted to see it work for her, so now, she's seen what it's done for me. So I'm going to go on now and hopefully cure her nerve pain that she's had for like 18 months, and it's really debilitating her as well. So.
What does your mum think about the fact that you're treating her at a distance and you're not even touching her with it?
She hasn't got her head round that yet, because I've said to her, listen, I need your nails, why do you need them for? And I was like, no, I need you to cut some for me so I can put it in there. What's that for? And she looks, but I've said to her, I've not done anything, it's just me walking around and it just treating me. I think she just can't believe it, But I think the proof will be in the pudding when I cure her nerve damage, which 100% will.
Well, very good.
I've got to ask this, even though I'm dreading a reply. What do you think of the healing?
Well, I think that a lot of people are getting results from it, as they do from most frequency devices, be it a tuning fork or whatever it might be. But the problem is the price. Yeah. I've got something on the on my website made by John White of Spooky, which he's called the He-Wee, because he was so angry that Healy is selling for about 2,500 quid this device, which we're selling for 350 quid or something.
One and a half grand, that.
Yeah, so that's what I think of the Healy.
Okay. Already got one, too late. I made all my mates get one as well.
Yeah, the problem with the Healy is it's a multi-level marketing company who are selling it, and of course it's going to cost double at least, and everybody involved is probably going to lose all their friends. Because, you know, multi-level marketing, people tend to sell to all their friends until they don't have any anymore. Okay, so has anybody got a question they might like to ask? I'm quite happy to answer the odd question, yeah.
What, can you use these devices with people who have pacemakers or ICDs or anything like that?
You wouldn't want to be the first one to try it. You know, there's no way that I'd want to use it on anybody with any device that I might kill them if I blasted them. So yeah, you got to be careful about that.
Do those things work on fibroids?
Do those things work on fibroids? Well, they might well, but what to understand about fibroids is that they're almost certainly got a basis of a deficiency of iodine and maybe selenium. So if you're low on iodine, the sort of things you might get might be dry skin. You might get cysts, fibroids, you might get thyroid damage, you might get brain fog. So yeah, anybody with fibroids, the first thing has got to be iodine and selenium. Then you want to look at two other supplements. One is MSM sulfur, and the next one would be serapeptase. Yeah, well, great.
Those are the ones we got. And funnily enough, we had a real success story with the MSM with my father. You had an issue where your eye shut down. It looked like a semi-stroke. And had all sorts of tests at Moorfields Hospital and all this madness. And they thought it was a stroke. It wasn't, but it was, you wanted to come off blood pressure medication. We saw one of your videos on the Secret Health Club, and we got the MSM, and after 1 day of using the MSM, his eye started opening, and it's now fully open again. So we got the Can-C as well to be able to start tuning up the vision, etc. So any other kind of help with vision things would be great. So I know you want to get back behind the wheel of your car, don't you? He hasn't been able to drive.
So you could try the eye peptide along with the pineal gland peptide. So why the pineal gland peptide is so important for eyesight is because the pineal gland is what creates melatonin. And melatonin is an anti-cancer agent. And there are now people using many, many times the dose that was previously thought safe in reversing cancer with using melatonin. Obviously, they've banned melatonin. Obviously, just like they banned serapeptase, loads of things I used to recommend, they've banned because people are discovering that they're working, which is super crazy. But you can get around everything. You can get around pretty much everything, and even melatonin can be found because it's legal in Italy. And in theory, if something's legal in one European country, it's legal in the others.
Can you source that?
Can that be sourced, Vicky?
Yes, you can order it from Italy, a company called Bio Shop.
By a clock shop.
Bio
Shop.
Yes, yeah. I can write that down for you.
Bioclock shop.
Yeah.
I say it's also online, you can buy it actually. Here in the UK it's with prescription only, but you can order it online.
Yes.
Yeah,
But-
you can order it.
But there are different types, and you want the highest quality. The highest quality is Dr. Pierre Paoli.
Yeah.
Sorry, which one?
Dr. Pierre Paoli. Pierre Paoli.
What's the name of the iPad? Sorry. Yeah.
I think it's called Visolutin, but if you look on my website, clivedecard.com, there's a link straight to the peptides. So aside from that, on the Secret Health Club, there is the eyesight page, which is, probably you've looked at that already. But there's a lot of interesting things you can do. And personally, I use the eye electrode on my closed eyelid, and I don't do it every day, which I probably should. But essentially, what these devices do is they pump electrons into the body. So how do we get electrons normally? Well, just by walking around, exercise, when we eat foods with antioxidants in, stuff with vitamin C or so on, that creates electrons. If we touch the ground barefoot, we're getting electrons, and we thrive on electrons. If we don't have electrons, we do not thrive. So what these devices do is they are electron generators. So let's say we went out and walked barefoot. Okay, we'll get this much benefit. Using this for a couple of minutes, you get maybe 10,000 times the electrons you'd get from really any other method. So 10 minutes is the maximum run time you'd ever treat somebody with, but most people, I usually stop after 2 minutes of treatment and ask if it's better. Often happens. The quickest result I ever had was 10 seconds, where this woman came with lockjaw. She couldn't really open her mouth or talk properly, and before I had time to say, "Can you feel it yet?" her mouth dropped open. She could talk normally. So it can, results can happen very, very quickly. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Treatment for Hashimoto.
Okay. So anybody who's and deep vein thrombosis. Okay. So the first thing is that person drinking enough water? Because blood clots, thrombosis, there's a possibility that it's something to do with dehydration. I would suggest that magnesium might be a valuable supplement for anybody with those situations, because magnesium allows the body to relax, and all of us are stressed. The world is a super stressful place, and our bodies cope with stress by burning the magnesium. So if we're running low on magnesium, then nothing really works properly. The blood flow doesn't work properly. Things get tight and restricted. So let's say that somebody's a bit dehydrated and their blood's a bit thick, and it's going through blood vessels which are not able to relax properly, because perhaps there's dehydration, perhaps there's magnesium deficiency. Then the blood can literally rip off a little bit of blood vessel, and that could turn into a clot. So I would suggest that everybody in this room is low on magnesium, and I'm sure many of you are using it, but anybody who's not using magnesium needs to understand that they're almost certainly going to benefit from it, and a lot of people are dying from lack of magnesium, which I'll go into a bit more in a minute. I just wanted to cover your issue. So the deep vein thrombosis and Hashimoto's. So any thyroid issue, and Hashimoto's is a thyroid issue, tends to have its root in low iodine. And everybody's low on iodine, just like everybody's low on vitamin C, everybody's low on vitamin D in winter, everybody's low on vitamin C. We're all low on this basic stuff. So, I think as many of you know, if you're using fluoride in any way, if you're bathing in chlorine or drinking anything with chlorine in it, or if you've bought any new furniture in the last 10 years, which is off-gassing bromine from the fire retardants, which is really every house, everybody's low on iodine. And low iodine means low IQ, low iodine means brain fog, can mean skin issues, hormonal problems, and Hashimoto's. And so the trick is with iodine to first of all learn about it, because it's incredibly powerful. One little bottle would last a year, and you want to dilute it in water, wouldn't want to use it neat. It's so powerful. But they still use it in surgery. You know, before they cut you open, they might paint you with iodine because no bacteria or fungal infection can possibly survive it. So every few minutes, all the blood in the body goes through the thyroid. Now, if you've got enough iodine in the thyroid, then every pass of blood means that your blood has been disinfected with the iodine. So you've got a bacterial infection, well, you can probably turn it off if you've got enough iodine. So why are people getting infections? Well, if you're low on iodine, you haven't got your natural immunity to just knock those bacteria out. So iodine and selenium need to be taken as a pair. So again, if you get onto the Secret Health Club, have a look at the iodine page and the thyroid page and gen up on it, because it's massive. You know, most people notice the difference with these basic materials that I'm mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, while using the Tesla machine, is it better for the patient to be on the ground grounded or off the ground in the reclining chair? Because I do use it for reflexology, and it's whether there's a difference to it being the person.
Yeah, you don't want to be grounded.
You don't want to be grounded.
Yeah, yeah, you want to be wearing rubber-soled shoes or, you know, not touch any metal, not to be grounded, because you're building up a huge voltage in the body. Okay, just to fill you in, if you're wondering, over the years, I've teamed up with pretty much everybody that I know who restores these devices, and we've got a team of us now around the world, and we find them and restore them and sell them. And so quite a number of practitioners use them. Most of them, in fact, I don't think I know anybody who's using one that actually has a website. It's all off the books. But if anybody is interested, they are available. Yes?
How much are they?
They start restored from about £1,200, and one like this is significant, hugely more. But you know, there were a lot of them around. You know, if we got time machine back to 1910, 1920, we'd probably see them in the local chemist shop. And if we went to the barbers, they'd probably be there. Went to the dentist, they'd probably be there. And went into a hospital, they'd be there for sure. You know, it wasn't that long ago where you had a choice when you went into hospital. You know, Guy's Hospital in London. If you went there in 1843, they would have offered you electrotherapy, homeopathy, herbalism. You know, there were mineral water baths, there were hydros throughout England where you'd go and get treatment with mineral waters. You know, it was drugs, surgery, radiation would have been your last choice. But after the war, of course, that became the first choice, and the technology was basically lost. So I recommend to people that, you know, at this point in life, we all need to be reconsidering what is our role. What is our purpose in life? Why are we here? What do we really want to do? If money didn't matter, what would we do? You know, most people I notice spend their lives following income. They follow income when they'd be much better off following outcome. You know, they're chasing the money. And so one of the products that we've been working with recently, we've teamed up with this fantastic mushroom expert who over the years has been studying what frequencies mushrooms really like, what makes mushrooms thrive. And he's now at the stage where he's developed his own strain of St. George's mushroom, which is a very interesting one. And we've put together with him a combination of mushrooms along with monatomic elements. I don't know whether any of you have been working with monatomic gold or anything like that. I put out a video about 10 years ago about how to make it, because you can make monatomic elements by refining seawater, for example. And so we've put together this mushroom blend, which we've called Focus, mainly because so many people are finding it's giving them focus, giving them clarity and a purpose. And I haven't seen that happen with other mushroom blends or materials quite in general in the way that this one is working. It's very interesting. When we first brought it out, we cut the dose in half because the effect was so noticeable that I thought it was too much. And Vicky, you've had a couple of people tell you stuff. Can you explain very briefly what... do you want to stand up or use this maybe?
Yeah, so we haven't actually brought it out yet. We thought we'd test it out on a few people.
See if anybody died or not.
Just because he obviously had been using it with his friends, so yeah, and he also needed to grow the mushrooms, so we had to wait a period of time because he actually grows the mushrooms that go into these capsules. And yeah, he's created his own strain of this mushroom, which is grown using frequencies that or a frequency that he's discovered to be compatible with this this mushroom. It's also lion's mane, which is known for, it's a really like high quality super duper lion's mane in there as well, which is known for its ability to stimulate brain cell healing and to stimulate neural growth, and then the monatomic elements seem to be the mushrooms seem to be acting on the brain healing. The monatomic elements seem to be making that connection permanent with people. So I have a dog sitter who was ever so shy, hardly said anything, really kind of quite nervous, and I asked him if he wanted it. It's a 6-week course, and it's you take the capsules for 4 days, and then you take a 3-day break to allow the monatomic elements to leave the body, because you don't want to continuously take monatomic elements. And so he did a 6-week course of these, and a couple of weeks ago he was just like, I've got to thank you, this has like completely changed my life. And I don't want to say it's like the answer to all your problems or the answer to all your prayers, but for him personally, he basically, way back in the days, he told me, and I didn't even know this, he'd actually said he'd fried his brain with various different substances, and he never thought that he'd get his brain back to normal again. But he'd been using adaptogenic herbs for years, quite a couple of years, and he'd done lots of things to try and repair his brain. And he said, I thought I'd actually got to where my brain was going to be for the rest of my life. But now, I mean, I've seen a complete change in him. He's less nervous. He's chatty. And I've got an artist friend who, she was struggling with her creativity. She felt disconnected. She's been through a lot. Her mum had the jab, and she's had 3 strokes. Long story. And so I said, do you want to try these capsules out? And I was looking for feedback, really. That was what I wanted, because we'd heard such great things from our guy. We wanted to see what feedback we would get. And within a day of, like, literally the first day, she was back into her artwork. Another friend, I said, how are you feeling on the mushroom capsules? He went, oh, I don't really think it's doing anything, because they're very subtle as well. And actually what was happening was he was restructuring his business. He was totally, like, he's put his house on the market because he wants to go for his dream home and become mortgage free, but he didn't put it together with the mushrooms. So yeah, we've had pretty much nothing but good feedback. And I would say the worst feedback is like, no, I didn't really notice anything. But actually, did you just not notice because it's so subtle? I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of the feedback I've had so far.
Yeah, the wonders of mushrooms. So, anybody got another question?
I've got a question. Could you tell me what monatomic elements are? I've not come across that at all.
Okay, well, They were discovered by this chap called David Hudson, and there's lots of stuff online about David Hudson and how he found out. And it's, you know, there are a few materials where all life is there, you know, like the sea. You know, sea salt really is a fantastic material, and most people get them on atomic elements by extracting it from seawater. And it's not my greatest field, so I can't fill you in very much more than that. Somebody?
Yeah, hearing loss. Recently had a sudden loss of hearing, and have to wear hearing aids now, and still a relatively 50-year-old.
Okay, well, there are a couple of things you can do for hearing loss. There is a material which, generally speaking, you have to get on prescription called aldosterone or aldosterone, like testosterone, aldosterone. And you can get it as pills and you can get it as drops. And some people have responded that for 3 days their hearing was too loud. So whether it's going to work for you, I can't say, but it's worth looking into. And I'm pretty sure you can get it from Profound Health. Then, if you want after this, we'll try the ear electrode and see if that'll improve it. I've had quite good results with improving hearing, so that might work. Okay, anybody else got a question they want to ask? Yes?
What about somebody who's got the pylon, that's been in their pylon?
Sorry, you have to speak much louder, I can't hear you.
So somebody that lives near a pylon, electricity pylons,
Yes.
those things that affect them plus the Wi-Fi, what would you recommend for those?
Moving. Yeah. I mean, it's... I don't know what else to suggest. You know, some people paint their entire houses with anti-EMF paint and get a 4-poster bed, you know, and surround themselves in anti-EMF. But I think moving's probably the best bet. I don't know. You know, there's that nice Mr. Musk who's putting up tens of thousands of satellites. That'll sort them out. Yeah. Yes?
What are your views on shedding and what can you do about it?
Okay. My views on shedding are that I don't choose to believe it. Basically, because if I did, it would be quite a frightening prospect that you could, you know, that regular people might infect you with something. So until it's absolutely shown to me that shedding exists, I prefer not to believe it. That may be hiding my head in the sand, but what are you going to do if it did exist? So, you know, they want to scare you in every possible way. So, you know, making everybody afraid of everybody else is absolutely right up their street. So I choose not to believe it.
Could this machine help anybody that is diagnosed with brain dead?
Yeah, great question.
Thinking of a little more arty.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me, it's something this place that the judges have to decide who lives and who dies. And if this machine could help, you know, I'd buy one.
I've no idea. I've absolutely no idea. I mean, you know, brain dead sounds awfully serious, doesn't it?
Well, it's suggested that they're brain dead. It's not necessarily true that they're brain dead.
Oh, I see.
It might be, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know. I would like to think it might help. It depends. Do you know what happened to the kid in the first place? Was it an accident or?
He was playing an online game and strangled himself and it went too far, so things seems to be unleashed.
Oh, I see. Well, if he's had oxygen starvation, then there may not be much that can be done. I've not heard of anybody coming back from that, so I don't know, I'm afraid. Yes?
You mentioned having iodine with selenium in a pack. Is there any need to be a little cautious of how much selenium to take? Because I have read that you can take too much.
Yeah, so if you go online and look up toxicity of selenium, it will tell you that you're going to die. And there's not much hope. And you know, if you were to overdose with it, that would probably be really nasty. And of course, this is basically fiction, but it depends what type of selenium we're talking about. So there are several seleniums on the market out there as supplements. There's sodium selenite, which is the cheap one, which is not the one you want. You do not want that one. Then there's selenomethionine, which is a version of selenium mixed with the amino acid methionine, which is a perfectly good version. But a few years ago, I discovered another version that had been developed, I think, in the 1960s or the 70s, and it was shown, this version is a liquid version. It's made with a mixture of sesame oil and tung nut oil, T-U-N-G, tung nut. And it's many hours of processing to make this type of selenium, and it's non-toxic. So this liquid selenium that we do, that's on my website, is non-toxic, and the results with it have been extraordinary. I had a woman on the Secret Health Club ask Clive anything a while back, who said that not only had she immediately stopped being an alcoholic, but that after a few months her hair colour had come back, and obviously it hasn't worked for me. But when I was young, you used to be able to buy a shampoo, an anti-dandruff shampoo, which was called Selenio or something, and it proudly said with added selenium, because selenium's good for hair, skin and nails and so on. But where selenium can be particularly interesting is things like fibromyalgia. Anybody who's got ME, those sort of, you know, they're feeling incredibly weak and not strong, could well be a selenium deficiency, because there's not a lot of selenium in a lot of soil these days. So selenium can be very important, but it's particularly useful if somebody's on a prescription medication or using methadone or heroin, or they're on some heavy-duty doctor's drugs. If they take a very large dose of selenium, you know, the normal dose would be 1 drop every 2 or 3 days. But if they were to take maybe 10 or 20 drops for 3 days, had a whole host of people come off drugs that they had found it previously impossible to come off. Because if somebody gives up alcohol, for example, they might get the DTs, you know, get the shakes, delirium tremors. Somebody comes off heroin or methadone, they might have cold turkey where they're shaking and sweating and they're in pain and it's hell. Now, the alcoholic and the heroin addict generally assume that what they're experiencing is a lack of alcohol and a lack of heroin or methadone. No, what it is that the body has got used to being poisoned on a daily basis. So the body makes antitoxins to alcohol, makes antitoxins to methadone and heroin. So when the addict gives up, which is usually like bam, suddenly the body hasn't woken up to the fact that they've stopped poisoning themselves. So selenium has the magic ability to turn off the antitoxins. So people can find it much, much, much easier to give up substances when they use selenium. And the same is also true of amino acids. So again, on the site we've got amino acids that are meant for couch potatoes. And what I mean by that is that most amino acid supplements are made for bodybuilders. You've probably seen them, they often come in dirty, great big packs of whey protein and with amino acids. And so if you're working out 5 times a week or something, that might be what you might want. But for most of us who are not working out on a regular basis or at all, we might benefit from an amino acid blend that's just meant for normal people, not weightlifter types. And the difference that amino acids can make to people can be extraordinary. A friend of mine, she went vegan, and she wasn't as strong as she had been when she had been eating meat products. Then she discovered amino acids, and all she needed was half a teaspoonful, which is less than a dose every day, and she was bouncing off the walls with energy. And on a day when she forgot to take it, she was, it was amazing. And for many people, they notice the energy boost, particularly if you're vegan. You know, we get amino acids from things like hemp or beans or various vegetable products, but maybe only 20% as bioavailable as from animal products. So the people who aren't eating animal products, they can be low on amino acids and may find they're just running low on energy. Amino acids can help with lots of other things as well. But very, you know, all the things I'm mentioning I think are probably worth trying, because even if you don't need them or get the benefit, probably somebody else will. And you know, there are really only about 10 supplements that I think are vital for pretty much everybody to take. And just to run through them very briefly, just to be clear, fulvic minerals, Fulvic, I know a lot of people here are taking fulvic minerals, super valuable just to get those little trace elements that our bodies need and are generally lacking from food. Magnesium, everybody needs it. Iodine, vitamin C, vitamin D in winter. Now for some people, zinc. If you've got white dots on your fingernails, that would be a sign you're low on zinc. And zinc is very important, particularly for men. Every time a man ejaculates, he loses zinc and selenium. And you know, there's a reason why oysters were considered the ultimate aphrodisiac, because they have the most zinc and selenium in them. So particularly young men can benefit from zinc and selenium. Somebody told me just earlier on that, trying to remember the phrase, oh yeah, morning glory, right, with 1 zinc tablet. So we've just changed our zinc blend to add a few other things to make it more potent. And it's all about the potency. I mean, with the mushroom blend we were talking about, we've put niacin in there because niacin boosts blood flow, and so it makes everything work better. Okay, time for another question. Somebody got a question? Yes?
I hope you don't mind me asking, I do have your products, but how do we know that we can trust the source of your products and where do they come from and the quality?
Well, good point. I used to work with my dad years ago, and he had this poster above his desk which said, "My tastes are simple, I just like the best." And he used to say that, look, the way forward is that if you can buy the best, it's likely to last the longest, be the best value in the long run. That sort of approach. And I have just followed that. I mean, you know, I've got an ego to support, so if I'm going to recommend a supplement to somebody, my ego demands that it's got to be the best because I want it to work. So basically, over the years, I've just tried to go find the best that I possibly could, and it's a minefield out there. You know, one of the reasons I started a supplement company in the first place, you know, a decade and a half ago, was that if you go into a health food store, how do you know what to buy? How on earth do you know? And the people in the health food store, they don't know because it was the salesperson who probably told them about it. So I decided to start a company literally to try and sell the stuff that really, really worked. Then I discovered that Holland and Barrett at that point were owned by the Carle group, who are one of the nastiest arms dealers in the world. And then Solgar, they were owned by the Carle group. You know, can you trust arms dealers with your health? Well, of course you can, because they care. So now I think maybe 95% of the health industry has actually been bought out by the bad guys. You know, something like that, because you know, if you're the drug company, well, it would suit you to buy out your competition, i.e. the health supplement companies, and maybe, you know, reduce their potency or choose. There's the famous one, I think it was Armour Thyroid. They do a natural thyroid medication. You know, the doctors would put people on thyroxine, whereas a doctor 150 years ago would have put you on a natural extract from an animal's thyroid, for example. And that company got taken over, and suddenly the product wasn't working well, and nobody could figure out why, until it turned out the company who'd bought it had sprayed on a protective coating so that the pills didn't dissolve anymore. Yeah, so how to know whether you can trust it? One of the incredible statistics, I haven't got it here to show you, but on our website it shows how many return customers we get. And we've got over a 90% return customer rate, which I'm told is incredibly unusual and extraordinary. So, you know, does it work really? Because I get so many people who say, well, I tried magnesium. And I said, okay, well, how many did you try? And they say, well, I took 2 a day. And I said, well, what type did you take? And then it turns out they probably took the common cheap one that you get in the stores, which is often magnesium oxide, which basically doesn't provide you with any bioavailable magnesium at all. So it sort of suits the industry to get people to try something which just doesn't have the oomph it should. You know, as somebody mentioned earlier on, I recommend with the magnesium capsules that I sell, which are quite big. I mean, they're 600 milligrams, which sounds like a lot, right? I recommend that some people, if I think they're really low on magnesium, might take 12 capsules a day for a day or two, which is just massive, way more than anybody would ever think possible. But as somebody mentioned there, their trigger finger, you know, people have operations for locked trigger finger. I've had people who they've taken enough magnesium in 1 hour that their fingers unlocked after maybe years. So it's trying to find the right dose of the right quality. Okay, another question?
Clive, can I just ask, have you come across the iTerahertz ones, and how do they compare with the Tesla?
Right. Another multi-level marketing device is the iTerahertz wand, and I've got somebody who tells me it's the best thing that they've ever tried ever. But I don't know. It's not that expensive. I think it's about £300 or something. Have you heard any good things about it?
I've heard good things about it, but I've not experienced it.
No, I haven't experienced it, but I was thinking of buying one just to.
I've ordered one.
Oh, right, okay. You've ordered one. Good. So, yeah, I'm automatically put off by multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
Just right away, I just don't want it. However, if it works and if 300 quid will get you out of pain, well, great. You know, if it works. But usually these things are knocked off by other companies in months. I mean, like I was explaining with Spooky doing the microgen for 1/10 of the price of the Healy. I dare say that if it's selling for £350 now, that very, very shortly, in weeks, it will have been copied and will come out a lot cheaper. In summary, I would suggest that if anybody's interested in one of these Tesla devices, they can email me at info@clive-to-carle.com, and we'll get back in touch with you. They come up from time to time. I don't think I've got one actually for sale right now, but they do come up, and I'm happy to put people on waiting lists. Anybody who's not a member of the Secret Health Club, I recommend that it is a fantastic resource of information which is just being added to all the time. And I've got a bundle of cards here which people can pick up. And so thank you so much for coming, and look forward to seeing you again soon. We're going to put on probably more events here, along with some other places. We might put on whole day events, because, you know, obviously as you're experiencing, we're only sort of scratching the surface of what we could be talking about. You know, there's just so much information out there, and we need to, all of us, become empowered ourselves, because we can't trust doctors, and you know, I would suggest that everybody needs to stock up with whatever materials, iodine or magnesium or vitamin C, they think they might want, because who knows what the future's going to hold. And I think we need to take our own health in hands and help everybody around us. And finally, I'd just like to say that what's happening in the world that I observe right now is that people are saying to government, stop hitting us so hard. You know, please don't hurt us so much. Whereas people need to start saying to government, and I'm going to put this very politely, they should just fuck off. I think the world does need to change what they're asking for, which is no government. Yeah. But, so, I mean, the thing is that we've got, around the world, millions of public servants, right? And the word servant is meant to be a nice word where you help somebody. You know, I view myself as a servant. I'm sure most of you see yourselves as serving. And so we've got 1 million people in this country whose job it is to help us. So, you know, let's say just government disappeared and suddenly we were just running the joint. Well, let's say you just said to every civil servant, look, just stop whatever you're doing every day, just relook at everything to try and help people. You know, if you're a planning officer or you're a parking or whoever you are, just try and help people instead of making their life a fucking misery. So, you know, so I think we need to be clear that anarchy, you know, no rulers is the only answer, because when government goes on holiday at Christmas, have things ever got worse while they're on holiday? No. And they just shouldn't come back, you know. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.